So this general meeting, we're going to have Mr. Jordan Nielson talk to us about the library databases and how to navigate some of them, and tips and tricks in order to like succeed in research using the library databases. So Mr. Nelson is the head user services and engagement in the SFSU library, and he's also the business librarian. So if these are his contacts, and you can also have an appointment with them using the link here. We will also share this with you in an email afterwards. So, Mr. Nelson, if you'd like to start your presentation, we'll stop our sharing and you can go ahead and share. Thank you.
Let me share my screen and let's see. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
I always like to double check. You just never know.
Very true. Thanks for asking.
Okay, so here's, I'm going to try and keep the chat open so that I can keep an eye on that as well. Okay, so so good afternoon, everybody. So I know a couple of you, but those of you I don't know, my name is Jordan Nielson, and so I am, as the business librarian at San Francisco State, I'm really your go-to person in the library should you need any need help with anything, should you have questions about any of our services, our resources, those kinds of things. And by the way, I've been having some internet issues, so I'm going to keep my video off. Normally I like to have it on because I'm kind of strange to sort of have this disembodied voice talking to you, but unfortunately yesterday I had some issues when I was trying to present and have my video on at the same time. So just to make sure that I don't get kicked out of the session, I'm going to keep video off. But under normal circumstances, I would have it on and you could all see me. But anyway, as I was saying, I am your go-to person in the library, and that really runs the range of anything you have questions about. It may not be something that I can get the answer to right away, but I can certainly, find out in the library who knows the answer to it if I don't have the answer. Now, my specialty, because I am the business librarian, my specialty is business. So I've been a business librarian for many, many years, and I I got my MBA, and I was an undergraduate business student. So I've, got quite a bit of sort of background in doing business research. So first as a student, and now as, for my career. So really, anytime that you find yourself being asked to do research that's specifically focusing on business, I can help you with it. A lot of times students with, they're not sure how to get started, or they're not sure how to use particular database, or they're not sure which database to even use. So what I want to do today is give you all a general idea of the resources that exist, specifically a couple of resources that would be beneficial to you all as international business majors. And so, we're going to take a look at a couple of different resources today. Because we only have an hour, I don't want to spend a lot of time sort of going into the nitty gritty of each one. Because some of these databases, as you'll see, are, very powerful, and they can, quite frankly, you could spend days talking about them and still not cover everything. So, today I'm really going to sort of hit the highlights and show you a little bit about what you can do in some of these databases. And then we will have some Q&A at the end. But also, I want to stress this, and I'll say it times today. Anytime you have questions, if you don't think of a question today, that's okay. I am working remotely, so anytime you have questions, I'm checking my email I can meet with you via Zoom, whatever it is. You know, I don't want you to feel like, you know, this is a one and done situation where you have to ask your question today or you're never going to get it answered. You know, this is my job. My job is to support the students. You know, when you're working on your research projects and you have these questions, I'm really here to support you all. So, you know, just, you know, as you're working on research in any classes that you're taking, sort of just keep that in mind. Like if you need help, there's somebody in the library who can help you. So, so what I'm going to start by talking about is I just want to highlight really quickly just a few different things. These are some recent updates. So as this sort of banner here is indicating, we are now providing access to the full collections in the library on a limited basis. And by that, I mean, you can request them. You can't actually come in and pull books off the shelf like you could in the past. So this page right here will tell you all about how to do that. And you can request from our physical collections. You can also request items from other libraries. So we have an interlibrary loan service that we have here in the library where we borrow things from other libraries on your behalf. And so if there's a book that we don't have in our collections that you need to get access to, we can borrow that for you. You do have two ways of getting these items. So you can either pick them up on the ground floor of the library if you happen to be on campus or nearby, or you can have them mailed to you. And so when you fill out the form for your request, it'll ask you which you prefer. So you'll just need to tell us, you know, if you want to pick it up or you want to have it mailed, and then we'll get it out to you. So I also want to note that we are, let me go over here. We do have study space available in the library, very limited capacity. So in our commons on the ground floor, there are, I believe, 12 reservable spaces for students who need access to study space. And so if you come to this page, it'll give you all the details about that and tell you, and you can't actually come into the study space a reservation. So you'll need to make a reservation ahead of time before you come in. And they'll check all of that when you come in the ground floor entrance. But anyway, I did want to make you aware of those because those are fairly recent developments. We also, just this fall, started a 24/7 chat service, and that's what you're seeing right here with this little window. So all you would have to do is you click on chat now, and then you could put in your name. You don't have to. And then you can start chatting, and you'll be chatting with one of the librarians here at SF State. Now, during the day, the SF State librarians are the ones on the chat and they're responding to your questions. Overnight, because this is part of a cooperative system, librarians from other places in the world will likely be on the chat and be responding to your questions. They're trained librarians, so they know how to help you. And if they can't help you, they'll turn your chat into a ticket and they'll send it to us here at SF State so that we can follow up with you directly. So no matter what time of day you're doing research, if you ever get stuck, you're not sure what to do, you hop on this chat and someone will help you. If you ask a really complex business question, for instance, they'll likely refer you to me. And that's just because they want to make sure you're going to get the best answer possible, because I am the business librarian. So I, for instance, like when I get history type questions on chat, I always send those to the history librarian because that's not really my area of expertise. And so I want to make sure that students get the best answer they can. So we always route them to the appropriate subject librarian. So any sort of business questions will come to me. And so I just point that out because I don't want you to, get discouraged, like, oh, they're just sending me off to another person. We're doing that just because, like I said, I'm, the business librarian, so they want to make sure that you're sort of getting the best response possible. So that's a little bit about our chat. So now what I want to do is the resources I'm going to talk about today, they really live, there are a couple of different ways you can get to them, but I've tried to organize them in a way that makes it very easy for business students to get access to them. So on the library's homepage, if you go to research guides, and then you're going to see all these different guides for various subject areas that we have here at SF State. So you're going to want to go down to business, and then you're going to see that first business link there. And I'm going to throw this link in the chat so that way you have access to it. So this business research guide really contains all of the information that I'm going to cover today. So You've got the ability to get in touch with me on this guide. You also have the ability to schedule an appointment with me on this guide. So if you click on this schedule an appointment form, it will show you my availability. So at this point, all you need to do is choose a date and a time that works with your schedule. This tells you what dates and times I'm available. So just choose a date and time. So let's say October 15th, 1 p.m. That works. I'm going to hit continue. And then just fill out the form, put your name, your email address, and then tell me a little bit about what I can help you with. This is important just because occasionally I'll have students say that they need research help and they'll just put that form. And that, I assume that. So that doesn't help me really sort of prepare for the session. So if you're specific and you tell me like, oh, I'm an IBS student and I'm taking this course and I have to do this sort of project and I need this kind of information, that will help me sort of pull things together. So that way when we meet on Zoom, we can sort of just jump right into it and I don't have to, ask you those questions. And because these are only 30-minute meetings, we don't really have a lot of time to sort of go through like what project are you working on and what you need help with and those kinds of things. So this just helps me prepare. So if you do want to make an appointment with me, just try to be as specific as possible about what you need help with. And then once you hit confirm appointment, you don't have to do anything else. You'll be scheduled on my calendar. You'll get a confirmation for the appointment. I'll get a confirmation for the appointment. And then once I get that, I'll send you a Zoom link so that we can meet. But this is just another way that you can get in touch with me. It's not, you don't have to do it this way. If you prefer to just email me, that's totally fine. But if, as you'll see today with some of these databases, it can be a little tricky sort of navigating them. And so sometimes it helps to have that sort of, one-on-one interaction where I can sort of guide you through the process. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at least a couple of different databases that we have in the library. And again, I just want you to sort of get a sense of what we've got and how to use it. Then with the time that we have left, we'll have some Q&A. But again, if you don't have a question today, or if we don't have time for a lot of questions, you can always email me, and I'm happy to answer questions that way. So without any further ado, I will just jump into it. So I want to start on this business research guide. It's organized really sort of by information type. So depending on the project you're working on, you may need company information, you may need country information, you may need to do some market research. So it really just depends, but this is sort of the way I've organized it to streamline the process, so you don't have to sort of go, okay, well, what does this database do? I've sort of tried to organize it in a way that's intuitive, and it cuts down on you sort of having to figure out which database does what. So if, for instance, you need market research, this is where I'll start today. If you click on Find Market Research, you're going to see a few different options here for market research database we have. These all do a little different things. They do things differently across one platform to the other. I encourage you to try them out, and there are descriptions for each one on this guide. We're going to spend some time looking at Passport today, because I do think, particularly for IBS students, I think this is a really great database because it is focused on global consumer information, global marketing information. And so this is a really great place to get data, sort of analyses for specific industries, specific countries, consumers, and it's all sort of at the global. You can kind of narrow down into specific countries if you want, but you can also get a global perspective, which is really nice. So all you have to do to get into Passport is just click on the link there and then hit go to database. Once we're inside the database, I will sort of warn you, it is a little slow just because it's very graphic, intensive, and there's you'll see lots of charts and drop downs and search boxes and all sorts of stuff that you can sort of get into. And this is what I meant at the beginning of the session when I was saying, we could spend days, quite frankly, talking about one database and not really cover all of the components. So to sort of give you kind of the quick overview of this database, I recommend starting up here at the tabs. I always recommend this just because I find it's much easier to sort of navigate around the database using these tabs as opposed to keyword searching or using some of these drop-down boxes here. The keywords can sometimes be helpful, but in Passport, you're going to see a mixture of things like you're going to see analyses, you're going to see like raw data sets, to see PowerPoint presentations. There are even some videos in here. So when you run that search in this search box, it's going to search all of that stuff. And so your results will sort of be a jumble of those things. And that's why I don't really recommend going that route because it can be kind of overwhelming and confusing. So I recommend sort of navigating using these tabs because they sort of, like with the research guide, they sort of steer you in the right direction based on the kind of information that you need. So we'll start with industries. So under industry, you'll want to, choose the industry that you're interested in doing research about. Now, one thing you'll want to keep in mind is sometimes it's not obvious where a certain industry is going to be sort of categorized. Some of these are more obvious, like alcoholic drinks, that is really clear about what sort of information you would get in that industry category. Now, others, there's some overlap. So things like beauty and personal care versus health and wellness. There is some overlap between the two. So sometimes if you're searching in, say, beauty and personal care and you're not really finding what you need, think about other places that information might exist and think about potentially doing some searching in there. So that's the consumer products. They also do consumer services, and then you can get information on supply. So depending on sort of how you're coming at this, whether it's more product-based research you're interested in or service-based, you can kind of come at it from a couple of different angles. I'll just use alcoholic drinks as an example. So if I click on alcoholic drinks, this is going to take me to sort of a landing page that will help me get to alcoholic drink information. I could get to it by country. I could get to it a variety of different ways. So you see, if I want media related to this, I can search that way. If I want company profiles that are within the alcoholic drinks industry, I can kind of go at it that way. I always think these country reports here in the middle, I think these are very, very helpful, and I think they give you a good sense of what this database contains. So in the country reports, if you go under there, you can sort of select your category first. So if you want to focus at the top level, the higher level alcoholic drinks, which would include all of these subcategories, you can do that. Or you can narrow in and say, well, I'm interested in doing research on wine. So I want to see research on wine in, let's just say, Australia. So I'm going to do research on wine, the wine industry in Australia. And so I'm going to hit go. And now what this is going to do is it's going to take me to an analysis of wine in Australia. And so it's going to show you everything from sort of key trends within that industry, the major players. So who are the top companies? What are the top brands? So you can get a lot of that sort of information in this report. And I want to point out, so this is wine in Australia. It's a country report that was published in September of 2020. So that's another thing you'll want to pay attention to in this database is sort of the dates. There generally isn't a lot of historical information in this database, so you won't typically find reports from, say, like 20 years ago, but it is possible that you could find a report from maybe 5 years ago. So you want to make sure that you're checking the dates just to make sure you're looking at the most current report. Which this usually defaults to, but if you come at it from like a keyword search, you may end up getting to an older report. So you just want to be careful. So anyway, like I said, you've got, sort of the headlines, which include some key trend information. You've got lots of graphical information here, charts, all sorts of interesting things. Here, more of that trend information. Sales of wine by category. So you can see sort of growth across certain categories and decline in certain categories, breaking it down, of course, by the different categories of wine here. So it's just a nice way to sort of see what's going on in this industry. You've got the competitive landscape here. So these are the top companies, and you've got their their company market share over here. And these little icons are indicating either that it's growing, that the market share is growing, or that it's declining. If there was a little gray bar, that would sort of indicate that it hadn't changed. So anyway, that's companies. Then you have the top brands. So here are the top brands in Australia, top brands of wine. And again, the market share information over here. And then over on the left side, it's more of the actual analysis. So, you've kind of got the visual charts and graphs and things on the right. And then on the left, you've got this actual analysis where it kind of talks through the different trends and projections, forecasts for the next several years. Up at the top, right now we're on the analysis tab, but if you switch over to data graphics, this is all those charts and graphs and things, and it sort of consolidates them all on this page. So you actually go through here and see lots of different visuals. I really like the channel distribution that they have here in Passport because it shows you how this product is distributed throughout this country. So the majority, not surprising, is almost 90% is based retailing as opposed to 10% of non-store-based retailing. And then within each of those categories, they sort of show you how it breaks out. So within store-based retailing and then grocery retailers, you can see food, drink, tobacco specialists make the 87% of the grocery retailer distribution. But again, you can sort of compare it across different types of grocery retailers. So it's very interesting to sort of see how products are distributed across a market. So again, competitive landscape, the brands, the companies share performance. So you can sort of see the growth or decline, company year over year performance versus the market, market share concentration. So there, again, lots of visuals. You are totally welcome to use all of these visuals in presentations, in reports, wherever you want to use them. You just need to cite you got it from, but you're more than welcome to use any of these visuals because as we know, visuals, are a nice way to sort of communicate a really dense topic like data. About a particular industry, for instance. So make use of these if you have to do any sort of presentations or writing reports. So we sort of went at this first by going under the industries and looking at a specific industry, but Passport really gives you a variety of ways to sort of look at information for industries and consumers and countries. So if you want to look at more country level data, I would recommend the economies tab at the top. And then you see it gives you these different options. I'm going to take a look at the business dynamics. When you click on business dynamics, it's going to look like that landing page before, like when we went under the industries tab. And that's sort of why I like navigating using these tabs at the top, because it sort of has the same structure in terms of the pages that you end up on. So they're very familiar, they work the same way. So I think it cuts down on the confusion. So anyway, we've gone under economies down to business dynamics, and now we're going to go down here again to country reports. And this time, choose your business dynamics, and then you're going to choose the country you want to focus on. I will just stick with Australia for the sake of consistency. And then now what we're going to see, as opposed to an analysis of a particular industry within this country, we're going to see an analysis of the business environment for this country as a whole. So we're going to get some trend information up here at the top. There's a nice SWOT analysis and all of these different country level reports. So they're going to tell you basically, if you sort of are arguing that a company should expand a certain line of business in Australia, this is going to give you some really good information about sort of the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats that exist in the business environment. So for instance, you see a strength they've listed here, reduction in the corporate tax rate. But a potential weakness is a skills shortage. So if that may be something you want to keep in mind, if your company depends heavily on skilled labor, then you might have some challenges in terms of going into Australia, depending on the skills that you need. But that sort of information is contained in this report, which is very helpful. So as you scroll down, you're going to see lots of information about like the regulatory environment, how easy it is to do business in this country. So, if you want to see like paying, getting electricity, for instance, registering property, getting credit, you can see sort of how difficult or how easy it is to do. And is it trending in a certain direction? Like, is it getting harder or is it getting easier? And so then you can see things like the tax rate, operating risks, corruption perception. I always point this out because this is just, fortunately or unfortunately, this is just a part of doing business. And so you need to sort of understand the corruption as it relates to the business environment in a particular country that you're looking at. And so you can see not only how perceived or how corrupt Australia is perceived to be, but you can also compare it to other countries and see sort of how they measure up in terms of corruption. Data on crime, there's data on getting access to finance. You can see information about the transportation and infrastructure. So this is particularly helpful if you need a certain type of infrastructure in order to distribute a product, for instance. If you're trying to get, if you need shipping, for instance, or rail or something like that, you can get that sort of data here. You can also see things like how connected, how wired this particular country is. And again, all factoring into a decision, to do business in this country, potentially. So you can see lots of that information here. Education and skills. So this sort of goes back up to what we were talking about at the top of this report, the sort of the skills gap. You can see what the labor force in Australia is, what kind of areas their background is in terms of their education, skills. You can see things like the employment and labor costs and what industry most people are employed in, and information about the wages and how those sort of compare, employment rates. So there's lots and lots of data in here. And this is, again, focusing on the business environment particular to Australia. You can export all of this information. So like with this analysis, you can just download this report. So that way you don't have to, keep coming back in the database to refer to it. And that's true for all of the reports in this database. So, just keep that in mind, particularly if you're ever working in groups and that kind of thing. It just makes it much easier to sort of pull it all out of here instead of having to keep coming back in. So that was, the economies and focusing on the business dynamics. So now I want to shift gears really quickly to consumers and going down to lifestyles. As you can see, there are lots of different dimensions here through which you could do research about consumers. The lifestyles piece in particular, I think, is helpful because you get access to really interesting consumer survey data. So if you want broad information about sort of consumer preferences and consumer behavior in a certain country, the country reports will steer you in that direction. So again, all you'd have to do is choose sort of the aspect of consumers you want to focus on, so consumer behavior, and then choose the geography. And then it's going to create a brand new report. And this time, instead of focusing like the industry report focused on wine, the country report was focusing on Australia. Now we're going to focus on Australia, but specifically the consumers. So this isn't about a product. This isn't about the business environment. This is about the consumers in Australia. And so you'll see there's lots of data here, and you can browse through the table of contents and sort of jump around. But if you wanted to see something like, for instance, mobile phone activities of consumers in Australia, you could click on that, and then it's going to reload, and it's going to show you the data that corresponds with consumer behavior in Australia as it relates to mobile phone usage and activities. So you can see things like take a photo, and the darker the color, the more commonly people engage in that activity, and the lighter the color, the less frequently people engage in that activity. So This is, again, just a great way to get data about consumer behavior in a particular country. So instead of looking at sort of this report, I want to drill into some of this data. I'm curious about sort of getting into more specifics. So if I go under consumers again, back down to lifestyles, instead of looking at the country report about consumers in Australia this time, I'm going to actually shift over here to the lifestyles survey. So it's next to the country reports box. And I'm going to hit explore now. And then within this page, we're going to see, it's going to take a little bit to load because there's a lot of data points that it's loading. But this will allow you to actually drill into specific surveys that have been administered to consumers. And it'll give you both the global perspective and it'll give you sort of a country by country breakdown. And you can change the variables so that you're not, you change basically what you're looking at. So right now we're looking at consumer, they were asked about dietary preferences and restrictions. And so what we could change that topic if we're not interested in that. But I'll just use this as an example. So right now it's got the global results over here on the left-hand side. And you can see the variable right here that we're looking at is I look for healthy ingredients in food and beverages. And so you can see sort of how different countries compare. And over here, this is telling you how many people they surveyed. And what the responses to that survey, was. So for instance, with Australia, we can see that in 2020, almost 51% said that they look for healthy ingredients in food and beverages. Now, if we want to shift around, we want to say, I am trying to limit my intake of saturated fat. So when you click on that, it's going to rerun the question, and then you'll be able to see sort of that country by country breakdown like we were looking at for the other question. So again, you can see, and then it gives you some historical perspective here. So it compares the years where they have data available. If you want to switch, so right now we're focused on dietary preferences, but if we want to change this completely, we can switch it to a totally different category. And so if we hit change topic, we can come in under here and let's say, maybe I'm interested in switching over to shopping. And so maybe I want to see attitudes and motivations preferences. So I've chosen that variable, and now it's going to show me right here all the years for which we have data available. And this is the number of consumers that participated in the surveys. And so then when you hit apply, that variable will change. So now we're looking at shopping preferences. And then you can see the different sort of dimensions under each of the shopping preferences category for which you can sort of explore consumer preferences by country. So you'll see over here, like questions are, I like to find bargains. I like to visit shopping malls. So depending on sort of the question you want an answer to, I only shop for groceries with a shopping list. Buying eco or ethically conscious products makes me feel good. So you can sort of see globally, when you hover over that variable, you can sort of see globally how people responded and historically. But if you want that country by country breakdown, you just need to click on that particular question and it will reload and you can see sort of how it compares across countries. So that's one of the really, really great things about Passport is it gives you this ability to easily move between sort of doing country level analysis and then comparing it more broadly sort of on a global scale. So I really, really highly recommend it. I think this is sort of an essential tool for any IBS student because it is, so internationally focused. So anyway, I will, before I move on to the next database, I do want to pause and ask if there are any questions so far about Passport. I'll just pause for a minute. Okay, I see no questions in the chat. I don't see any hands up, so I'll just keep on. So I'm going to go back to the library's research guide. So again, research guides, we'll go down to business, choose business again. And this time I want to shift to industry information. So I'm going to go over to, well, I'm sorry, let me jump back. I'm going to go to find business articles first. So we'll get to industry information in just a minute. So Under Find Business Articles, there are lots of different databases here that will get you to business-oriented articles, reports, newspaper articles, that sort of thing. Depending on the kind of information you need, each of these databases works, a little differently, but they all do similar things. But the top two here, ABI Inform and Business Source, these are really databases that I would recommend you use regardless of what your research topic is. As long as it's business oriented, these two databases will really get you to a plethora of information, article-based information that is focused on business topics. So we're going to spend a little bit of time in Business Source Complete today, but I don't want to get too bogged down into this, but I do want to spend a little bit of time showing you some of the features in this database. So in Business Source Complete, you just go to database, and once again, it works like many EBSCO databases that I'm sure a few of you have probably seen before. I won't get into sort of the mechanics of structuring your search and that kind of thing, because that can take up a lot of time. But if you do have questions about sort of how to build a search and what terms to use and those kinds of things, feel free to email me. I'm happy to help you with that. But for the sake of the time, I do want to show you a little bit about how this works. So you can get a variety, like I said before, a variety of different types of reports and information in this database, everything from scholarly business research to market research reports and everything in between. So if you're interested in getting some of these reports, they're actually pretty easy to find. So if you come in here and let's say, I'm just going to say I'm interested in food. I want to just search just generically for industry related information that's connected to food. So I'm going to type in food in the search box, but then down here under the publication type, you're going to want to scroll a little bit until you see industry profile, and then select that and go back up. And now you're going to hit search, and what you'll find, the results, you'll see we have over 12,000 results. These are all industry profiles that have food, that have some connection to food. And so now we can do a little of tweaking to sort of modify our search results. So maybe I'm not interested in things back to 1998 for starters. Maybe I just want really current stuff. So I'm going to change this to 2020. And now my results will have dropped, from over 12,000 to 183. So there have been 183 profiles, industry profiles that have been published this year that have some sort of connection to food. I'll use this first one as an example because I've been using Australia, so I'll just stick with the Australian theme. And this is a report that's put together by BMI Research, which is a very well-known market and industry analysis firm. That you can see this is a pretty comprehensive report. It's 93 pages. If you want to actually open it up and read it, you can PDF full text, open up the full text of the report, and you'll see it's very, very detailed. You see it says it includes 5-year forecast to 2024. So I'll go down to the table of contents just to give you an overview of what this looks like. So you see it includes a SWOT. It includes information about the market, the competitive landscape, the top companies, and profiles for each of those companies. So these are pretty detailed reports. So if you're doing, international industry level type research, these would be great reports for you to take a look at. And so see here is the SWOT analysis. And so it's giving you some information about, areas where food and drink are performing strongly in Australia, and then areas where it's not so strong. But again, for the sake of time, I won't spend a lot of time talking about this particular report, but I do want you to know that these sort of things exist in this database. Now, you can easily export this information. You can just download the PDF if you want. You can email it to yourself. So you've got some options there. You also have the cite tool. So if you click on the citation tool, it generates your citation for you. So it takes out some of that work that you would have to do. One other thing that I wanted to note about this database is that it actually makes it really easy for you to do research by industry. So, we're looking at this BMI Research Australia Food and Drink report. Well, within the record of this report, you'll see these NAICS industry codes here. these industry codes, without sort of going into the mechanics of all of that, what I will say about them is it makes it very easy for you to do industry level research if you have one of these codes. And so these codes are used to track data, statistics, information about industries. So you'll see, and that's one of the unique features of this particular database, is that because it is a business database, most of the records in this database are attached to an industry in some way. So in this case, this market research report, it overlaps with the perishable prepared food manufacturing industry and then the all other miscellaneous food manufacturing. So what does this really mean? Well, because we have this code, let's say we're interested in doing research on perishable prepared food manufacturing. That's our whole research project. And so we want all the information we can get about that. Well, at this point, all you need to do is click on that code and it's going to rerun your search. And you'll see there are over 78,000 results in this database that have something to do with that perishable prepared food manufacturing industry. So at this point, you could just start narrowing by date. You could start narrowing by source type. So maybe you only want to focus on market research reports. You could add more key terms. So like if you want to see specific things, specific types of food or drink, you could put something in here. So like I'll put in coffee, see what articles are in this database that have something to do with coffee within this industry. So it makes doing research really, really easy when you have one of those codes, because now all of this information is very narrowly focused on that particular industry. Now you may be going, well, what do I do if I don't know the code? Like, how do I find these codes? Well, that's actually really, really easy. So if you go back to the new search, you hit new search and you're back on the home screen of this particular database, all you need to do is scroll down to the bottom and you're going to see NAICS industry code. And you can click on that link and a new window will open. And now what I recommend is if you're on a Windows PC rather, do a Control F. If you're on Mac, do a Command F, and then just type in, let's do, let me say prepared food. And then so there you see the perishable prepared food manufacturing and you see the code right there. And all you need to do is copy it and then put it in that little search box and then hit enter and it should come up with the same 78,000. Yeah, so there it is, 78,291 results. So depending on how you get the code, whether you run a search for articles and then get the code from the record, or you can go to that actual NAICS link and get the code that way. Either way, now, these codes will pop up again. We'll see them again in the next database that we look at. So they are pretty helpful in terms of helping you kind of focus your research. So this was a very, very, very quick search at look at Business Source Complete. It does so much more than this. But again, I just wanted you to sort of get a sense of what's out there and how to use it. You can get all sorts of company reports. So for instance, if you want to get like a SWOT analysis for a particular country, or company rather, you could type in SWOT and then the name of the company you want to focus on, you hit search, and now you've got the SWOT analysis. You can look at SWOT analyses for this particular company. Most large public companies will have these in here. You can also get country reports. So if you type in the name of a country that you want to focus on, go down here under publication type, you can say country report, select country report, hit search, and then you're going to see you have lots and thousands, quite frankly, of reports. And these will all contain different elements, but most of them will contain, particularly these country monitor reports, they'll contain economic data, political data, legal, social, technological, environmental. So they sort of go through the pestle analysis and break out the information that way for this particular country. So if you're doing country level research, this database has really great reports that you can draw from. So now I want to quickly, as I realize we don't have a lot of time left, I want to quickly show you IBS World, which is an industry database. So again, I'm going to go back to the business guide. And we're going to go in under find industry information. And IBS World is the first database that's listed here. And when you click on IBS World, go to database. Now you can, this is an industry focused database. And I should note that most of the information in here is focused on industries in the United States. So this isn't necessarily a globally focused database, but it can provide some helpful information when you're doing sort of, industry related research. So you can search by company and it's going to look for all the reports where that company referenced. You can search by industry. You can also search by code. So remember before we had that perishable manufactured food code. So now if I wanted to search for reports within that industry in this database, all I'd have to do is typing in the code. So the code was 319, and I'm going to start typing it out. Actually, I've got it here, I think. Yeah, there we go. So that's the full code. The full code is these 6 numbers. But watch what happens as I start taking numbers off. 3119, 3119. And so now you see before, when it was the full code, you see I've got baking, mixed, and prepared food production in the US. I could view more results. There's more there. But as I take numbers off, basically the way to think about these codes is the fewer numbers you have, the broader it is. The more numbers you have, the more specific it is. So that 311991 code is very specific about that perishable food manufacturing industry. Whereas 3119 is getting into food manufacturing more broadly. So you see we've got snack food production, coffee food production. So I'm just going to choose coffee production in the US to show you what one of these reports looks like. So when you click on that, you'll notice it's got the code up here, that NAICS code that we were using. You'll really use these tabs over here on the left to sort of navigate through this industry. The first page, industry report rather, the first page you'll see sort of an overview of the industry, which is always helpful because it's going to tell you sort of what is covered by this industry. So it lets you know like, oh, this is the report you need, or maybe you need to look at a different report because this one doesn't actually cover what you thought it would. Again, pay attention to the dates. So June 2020, this was just recently published. Here's the author. So when you cite this report, you would just cite this author. So as you scroll down, you get information like the key external drivers, what really is driving the supply chain in this industry. And then you see related industries and so on and so forth, major players. But like I said, you're really going to use these tabs to sort of jump around. So if you want to see things like industry at a glance, you can click on that. And this is going to give you like a snapshot overview of the industry. Now, if you want to dig into some of these pieces, let's say you want to see SWOT in the industry. You can click on the SWOT and then it's going to, sorry, it should take me to that section. Maybe I have to navigate down there myself. Well, for some reason it's not, it doesn't be moving, but I'm going to try a different, there we go, different structure. Well, for some reason it's not, oh, I know why, because it's all in this page, sorry. SWOT in the industry is over here. They've recently changed this interface, so I'm still learning it myself. But basically, if you want to navigate to a different section of the report, you'll just jump down to like industry performance, you'll click on that. And now you'll see sort of how the industry has performed historically and where it's forecasted to sort of go in the next 5 years or so. And you'll see what's influencing that. And here's the current performance. And again, you can use all of these charts, all this information and reports. It's all completely available to you, just cite where you get it from. The products and markets tab, this will show you the major product segmentations and the consumers. So when you click on products and markets, you scroll down, here are the major products and services. So the largest being roasted beans and coffee, ground coffee, and so on and so forth. And then underneath, you get some more analysis of each of those product segments. Now, further down, as you keep scrolling, you're going to see demand determinants, so what's really driving demand in this industry. But then you also see the major markets. So this is where we're getting into the consumers. So the largest a consumer segment is consumers age 60 and over. So you can get not only the top products, but then the major market segments within this industry, and then some analysis for each one of those categories as well. You can also see things like the competitive landscape. So this will have things like market share concentration, cost structure benchmarks, key success factors. So what does it take to be successful in this industry? here's those cost structure benchmarks. And so you compare sort of cross industry and cross sectors, profit, wages, all sorts of details about sort of the operational and competitive piece of this industry. You can also see the major companies and their market share, and you get a little bit of analysis for each one of those. So these are the major companies, and you can see sort of how they compare. A nice little visual there. And here's sort of their financial performance, the analysis for each individual company that's sort of a top company in this industry. So you can also export these reports. So it's very easy. There's a little download button over here. And I'm sorry, there's also, you can see archives too, which that's a fairly recent update to this database. So if you want to see sort of, you want to compare this report from 2019 to 2018 to see maybe historical patterns, you have the ability to do that as well. So I think I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So I'll stop it there. As you saw on the business research guide, there are plenty of other databases that I did not really get to that I do think could potentially be helpful for all of you. I think they would be good to know. I do want to quickly just point out, we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but there is a fairly new database that we just got under the Find Market Research tab. It's called Simply Analytics. This is a really great database for generating reports and creating visual maps related to sort of consumer data. So I would recommend signing in with creating an account and signing in, but for this purpose, I'll just sign in as a guest. But this database is, if any of you are familiar with GIS or have ever used GIS, this is sort of like GIS Lite. So you can create, like I said, maps depicting sort of consumer data. So for instance, if I start a new project, I'm going to type in San Francisco, and then I'm going to hit next. And it starts with sort of these what they call seed variables. And so you could create the project using sort of like these general variables they have in place, or you could create them without it. For the sake of this demo, I'll just create the project using the variables they've supplied. And you'll see it's going to generate a map for San Francisco. And you've got your key over here that's sort of telling you that this is looking at median household income. So obviously the darker the color, the higher the median household income. So if you were, for instance, trying to target certain areas of the city with a product, you would be able to target sort of maybe more affluent neighborhoods, for instance, if you want to do something like that. You can also change the variables over here on the side, lots and lots of variables to choose from. So something like consumer behavior, for instance, if you want to map out maybe how much people spend on food at home. And if you have a question about what a variable is covering, there's these little dots over here on the side. You click on that and you're going to hit view metadata, and it's going to give you a description of that variable. So this is total expenditures in 1 year by households in this geographic area at grocery stores or food stores, and then food prepared by the consumer. So I'm just going to select that variable, and now it is going to redraw my map. And you'll see, again, the darker the color, the more that is spent on food at home. The lighter the color, the less is spent on food at home. But anyway, this is a very, very, very quick look at Simply Analytics. You can create reports, comparison tables, all sorts of fun stuff in here. But I will stop it there because we only have a couple of minutes, and I want to make sure I stop and leave some time for questions. Yeah, so questions.
Anybody has any questions? I know that presentation was very thorough, and I feel like everyone learned something new, which is very important. I feel like a lot of people are going to be emailing you, Jordan, and annoying you about a lot of stuff right now.
Oh no, it's not annoying. It's not annoying at all. Truly, I mean, yeah. I really do like hearing questions that you all have. So please do send them.
For sure. Yeah. Anybody has any questions?
I apologize for overloading you and
Oh
going
no,
so fast.
that was amazing. And I definitely recommend emailing Jordan, or if you have like any more detailed questions, maybe like have an appointment with them.
Definitely.
I've personally had appointments with them and they helped me a lot during my reports, I remember last semester. So yeah, I definitely recommend that. So
Thank you.
anybody else?
I want to say something. Thank you so much, Jordan. I'm so amazed. Like, you came and presented in our class yesterday, but I'm amazed of like how deep we can go with like the other resources that you didn't even show yesterday, and you showed so much yesterday. So I'm definitely going to be contacting you, because for our projects, we're looking at the economic, political, legal, and like cultural environments of the countries that we're entering for our like business ideas. So I'm a little bit curious about how to do the research of like the specific industry in the specific country that I want to bring our product to. But I feel like I could go really deep with that into resource. So I'll save that for just like an individual call. But thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's a perfect example of when to like reach out to me and make an appointment. Is you know, working on a project, and you have like these specific questions that you need help with. I'm happy to meet over Zoom and sort of talk through them, and we can share screen, and I can kind of show you around the different databases and those kinds of things. So absolutely, that is a perfect example of I mean, it doesn't have to be an appointment, because I know you're all busy, you all have lives, you've got jobs, you've got stuff going on. So if you're like, I don't have time for a meeting, I just have some questions, feel free to email those to me, and I can make little videos, little screen grabs, whatever it is, so that way you're not sort of at a loss as to what to do. Just definitely don't feel like you have to go it alone. I'm really here to help however I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jordan.
You're very, very welcome. I appreciate you all, having me here today, and asking questions and spreading the word around about, that I'm here to help. So, you all are my greatest ambassadors. So I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you very much. Thank you so much, Jordan. And we will be sharing Jordan's contact, and as well as the appointment page for our follow-up email. And just to finish, maybe you can talk about.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. Here are ways you can stay connected. Please make sure to add your name to the official member list if you haven't. And yeah, so there's our Discord, website, and our Instagram.
Yeah, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. And we will be posting this meeting on our YouTube channel as well. So if anyone, we will be emailing everyone who missed it. Yeah, looking forward to that email, and thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jordan.
You're very welcome.
Nielsen.